Hello, fellow seekers. Welcome back to the Law of One Spiritual Advice Podcast. My name is El, and I return to muse with you on some Law of One topics, read you a quote, and just share with you my opinions on it. And today I have a couple of quotes saved. This is from Quo, and then I'll probably add on a little raw one in my ranting. And so this one, the topics are going to include sort of being the observer of mind, building your polarity, the discipline of mind, and duality. And I suppose, what is discipline versus control? Because those are very much two different things. So we will go into the subtleties of that and the being the observer of your mind. And without further ado, let's just get into it. So this is a quote from Quo, and you can find all this material through my website, theoneinfinitecreator.com, in which I have links to the LL Research material, who are the lovely people who provide all of this to us for free. So this is from Quo. It is dated 1992, May 31st. It says, "Those who wish to be peacemakers may work upon the self, gazing patiently and without judgment at the activities of the emotions, the mind, the stirrings of conscience, and the desires of the physical complex. Over a portion of your time, such an entity shall learn that it is by its own set of standards quite iniquitous." Which I looked up means grossly unfair / morally wrong. So they're saying here, such an entity shall learn that it is by its own set of standards quite iniquitous. This is a helpful realization, as it opens the way for true humility. Not that humility which abases itself, but the humility of one which knows itself, and without judging the self for being imperfect, acknowledges that being within incarnation and being veiled from knowledge of the true nature of things, the self will necessarily be somewhat confused and full of unknowing and doubts. The first act of the peacemaker is to have faith in this dubious seeming self. When faith has been found in the self, then the entity has no more point to prove, no more battles to win, no preferences which reach the point of necessity to receive or promulgate. End of quote. Quo, The Law of One, 1992, May 31st. So you can see here, this one is talking about specifically how to sort of be the observer, in that once you know the self and you start seeking the self, you will find that you are definitely imperfect. Perfectly imperfect, but imperfect. The standards that you set for yourself and for others are probably considerably high compared to, before you seemingly started seeking the kind of standards that you would set for yourself. As you be on the seeking path, you start to sort of judge your morals, and you start to realize that, you're a sort of somewhat of a moral creature, where you live in this world of duality, and it seems that there is good and bad and light and dark, and there is in that the choice to choose those things constantly. So maybe it seems too simple, but it may actually serve to somewhat split things into a duality type of thing, only for the sake of just so you can use your mind to see things as good or bad, but then recognizing in your head that both of those are choices which serve the creator, and it is your decision and your choice as to which path you decide you want to go down. And so let's talk about that a little bit. There is the mind. The mind is the seeker. The mind is the body is a creature of the mind. The mind is an important thing in your seeking. It is the thing that seemingly processes your reality. It is the computer system that you operate with and get to view this whole system throughout. So the main part of this podcast is this quote right here, which I just want to highlight, but I needed to read you the first part of the paragraph before we talk about the second paragraph. So I'm just going to highlight the second paragraph again. It says, after the part of you understanding that you're, somewhat a grossly unfair and seemingly morally wrong creature in your everyday living and just your existence, right? Like, you're far from perfect is what the first paragraph is saying. So the second paragraph, I'm just going to read again. This is a helpful realization, as it opens the way for true humility. Not that humility which abases itself, but that humility of one which knows itself, and without judging the self for being imperfect, acknowledges that being within incarnation and being veiled from knowledge of true nature of things, the self will necessarily be somewhat confused and full of unknowing and doubts. So I myself can really, really relate to this paragraph. I suppose I'm relating to it more so just because of the feedback that I've heard from you guys and just my seeking and attempting to serve over the last, seemingly 5 years or so. It's been a common thing for me, which it's a Blu-ray thing, is to my understanding. But I've learned to accept myself and my imperfections enough to a degree that when I'm speaking with other people and attempting to just communicate with them, I can. I don't know. I seem to have this gift to allow the other to just be who they are without being too embarrassed. Does that mean, like, how do I do that? I mean, to give you an example, I will just admit something honest about myself that most people aren't willing to admit. Like, yeah, I have feelings of anger and rage and revenge in my head, and and even though I run this Law of One page and I'm seemingly a spiritually enlightened type person, haha, I'm just joking. I still am very much human and have human thoughts, and I am not above perfection. I am not a perfectly moral excellent creature. Do you know what I'm saying? And like, as I am able to admit that, and in my admittance of myself, still in my heart love myself and really feel that I am a worthy, infinitely worthy creature in my seeking, then I can extend that hand, that open, loving hand, out to the other self as well, in which case they can just be free to express themselves and can be free to be honest with you. But I mean, maybe it was the first time that they're able to even be honest with themselves, because they have all these thoughts of being hard on yourself. Like, there's those people who have that inner judge in their mind who is very constantly judging and saying, oh, you did this wrong, this was morally incorrect, da 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 da. But realistically, that is a sense of you trying to control instead of discipline. And there's a difference between controlling your mind and disciplining your mind. And we can talk about that a little bit, because Rod actually mentions very specifically about this point. They talk about overcoming, right? So you don't necessarily want to overcome things. That's a sense of control. You're better off to learn, accept, and then become the creator, which just means like just use your free will to create as you decide. But you get to that point by learning, or first of all learning, so knowing the self, and then accepting the self. And through acceptance, that leads to transformation. Acceptance equals transformation, which technically can equal discipline, if I'm to lay this out a little easier, versus the other side, which is a controlling side instead of an accepting side, right? The service to others, people accept. The service to self, entity, polarity, controls. So there is a difference. And, discipline very much sounds like a synonym for control, but it is not. So I'm going to read you a quote from Ra, in which Ra states in session 18.5 in the Law of One, the reason it is unwise to overcome is that overcoming is an unbalanced action, creating difficulties in balancing in time-space continuum. Overcoming thus creates further environment for holding on to that which apparently has been overcome. All things are acceptable in the proper time for each entity, and in experiencing, in understanding, in accepting, and then in sharing with other selves, the appropriate description shall be moving away from distortions of one kind to distortions of another, which may be more consonant with the Law of One. It is, shall we say, a shortcut to simply ignore or overcome any desire. It must instead be understood and accepted. This takes patience and experience, which can be analyzed with care, with compassion for the self and for other self. End of quote. So you can see here, they are explaining how there is a seemingly difference between controlling something and overcoming it, as opposed to learning and accepting and transforming, i.e. disciplining the self, in a way which still sees the self with compassion, like compassion for self and for other self. So how do you do this, right? How do you do this? I think this was kind of the point of where I'm trying to get to with this podcast. So the idea is what I seem to think that I do is I am the observer of my mind. Does it mean like I'm kind of like bipolar in a way? I mean, I don't know, to a degree, certainly. It's like basically you are stepping back from yourself and just watching yourself. I mean, I guess that takes some art. Like it takes a bit of skill to step back. And maybe it's easy for me. It might not be as easy for others. But I can very much step back from my emotions and the reactions that are coming through my mind, and I am able to analyze them and just think about what it is that my mind is reacting to. That I guess what can I learn about that, right? It's stated that elsewhere in the material, I can't remember the quote exactly, but any catalyst coming towards any entity, if this entity is somewhat, I'm sorry, but in perfect balance, a perfectly balanced and activated entity would react in love to any single type of thing that happens to them. So what I do then is I just look at myself and the way I'm reacting. And anytime I am reacting not in love, well, then there is a point where I get to observe myself and just try to see what it is, what distortions within myself are leading to this reaction. So if I see somebody do something bad on the street that like stealing something from somebody or whatever, right? I can look at that and I can think into my mind, what am I thinking here? Am I thinking, this person is dumb and evil and bad and somebody should go beat them up and blah, 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 blah? Or am I thinking, hey, I wonder what types of experiences this person has gone through in life to have them be at the point where they're desperate enough to steal from another person. I wonder how much pain they're in and how much distortion they're in. Things like this. So these are sort of the two sides of my mind, right? You seemingly have the bad side and the good side, and neither of those are necessarily more correct than the other, I suppose. But the idea is now I can back up and I can see myself sort of making and reacting to these things in two different ways. And then I can just try to understand where I truly, like where my emotions truly lie. I suppose sometimes we react in a way that it just sort of goes off the handle into the negative side just because it's easier. But we can also react, obviously, in the positive way, which then it won't necessarily seem like as big a deal because the outcome of reacting in a positive way isn't always as noticeable as when you act like a big baby and be a big negative Nancy about everything, right? But anyways, the idea is you back up from your mind and you can observe yourself doing both of those things. You say, okay, I see myself acting this way and I see myself acting this way. Which way do I truly want to act? So I guess what I'm saying is that if you're trying to control or discipline, right, you're wanting to discipline instead of control. So a controlling person would very much look at themselves and try to control that and always react with the perfect reaction. What the service to others person does is slight variation of that. They seemingly will just react as their spontaneous self will. The spontaneous reaction to any catalyst is really the true essence of yourself. And through experiencing the true essence of yourself through your reactions to catalysts, you can know yourself better and you can understand, oh, this has upset me. Why did this upset me? Oh, I really, really love this so much. Why do I love this so much? Right? And so through being the observer of essentially your emotions in a way, they can be a very good indicator as to like where you are in the path and what things you need to work on and where your lessons of love still need development. And basically anytime you look at anything and you do not see love or some distorted version of love, well, you have work to do, my friend. And so, I'm just trying to say here, it's slow, long work. It's a shortcut to control. It's a long seeking process to accept and love yourself. And through accepting and loving yourself of your imperfectly perfect person, you, believe it or not, are going to become such a better lover of other people. When you love yourself, oh my goodness, anybody can say anything to you and it doesn't matter. You know who you are. You know the love that you have and that you are and that you can give, and nobody can take that away from you. Nobody. And even better than that, the love that now you're giving to other people is what I would explain is a Blu-ray love. As you have learned to love and accept yourself, you offer out that unconditional love and acceptance to other people who are most likely, because our culture does this, just they're probably in their head anxious about who they are, worried about the things that they think and their future and their past and all the things they've done wrong and all the things that they're going to do wrong in the future. And, just constantly being judged by everyone and everything, family, friends, people who love you and are trying to do well for you, but they still are judging you because they don't know any better. They're just projecting that way, right? So you can then just become such a better lover towards other people as you love yourself. I guess you may not know it until you experience it, but it's very freeing to a lot of people to honestly just be able to talk honestly. Most people are wearing a metaphysical mask, a mask which they put on for the world to present themselves in, just the way that they think is appropriate. But if you're able to, remove your mask and you can help them remove their mask, and in your guys' vulnerability, attempting to communicate with each other and speak and show that you love yourself and you're non-judging of yourself, and you can allow that other person to experience a bit of the same energy. And that energy is super duper healing. Often you just need to get people to talk. You don't even need to speak yourself. You may need to sort of get things going and lay out the vulnerability and take off the mask. But, I suppose normally what you're doing when you're attempting to serve is to get people to speak. As they are speaking, they are thinking things through their brain, which, they have to make sense of in order to verbalize. So very much if you are on the topic of self-love, acceptance, and you just sort of get someone speaking on that matter, they're very much going to be very healing in terms of them able to just sort of experience the energy that you're attempting to give and share with them. Okay, so I have written down here, see the good and the bad and be a witness. Know that perfection is beyond you. You seek to serve. Service does not require perfection. It requires a constant effort. One block at a time, one choice at a time, you slowly build your polarity and you slowly build your path. And as you are on your path, you seek the truth will come to you, you will know the truth, and as long as you are willing to work with acceptance, and you're not trying to control the nature of the illusion, and you're instead working with acceptance of things, then you should be doing well. And, like I said here, it requires constant effort, one block at a time. The one block at a time is building your polarity. You don't necessarily make the choice to seek to serve and all of a sudden you're immediately enlightened. It is you making the choice in every moment. That is the purity of your desire. That is the purity of your service. Can you make this same choice to serve others in all circumstances, even when the circumstances seem to be quite challenging? Can you still make that choice? That is you laying one brick at a time. That is you laying the foundation of your polarity, the metaphysical house that you will live in, I suppose. One brick at a time. I can't explain how important that is. Even if I can just give you a quick example, my silly Instagram page. I just did one post at a time every day for the past, 8, 9, 10 years or something like this. And it seems that the seeming success with the page, having high follower amount or whatever, I don't really care. The point is that happened, that seeming power manifested through me making that choice every single day to serve. It may seem like a small thing, but to do a daily service of finding art and a quote that makes people inspired or a quote that makes them think, to do that every single day of your life it can be a little tiresome, and it requires effort. Some days it's very easy for me, some days it's seemingly a bit more difficult, but I push myself to do it because I know that it feels right in the long run. But the point about this is that you can see how it was that slow build, right? One brick each day. It doesn't seem like, you can't lift a whole house by yourself, can you? No, you cannot. But you can lift one brick at a time, and through the years, you move that whole house over to a new location. This is kind of the idea, right? It's like you have the power to move an entire house and manifest that house, but it just is one brick at a time. And so know that your power comes from your purity and desire to serve, and that is, in my opinion, a choice that you make every moment of every day. Well, that's it. So, okay, so everybody, thank you so much for listening. This was a really weird podcast, in my opinion. I was sort of sporadic in that I don't know, I just sort of all over the place with this one. So anyways, I hope you guys still enjoyed it. I was just sort of having a bit of a trouble sitting down and recording this one today and getting back into this. So if any comments you'd like to leave me about a future podcast that get my brain moving and inspired to share some lovely things with you guys, please leave me a comment about that. I think in my next podcast, I'm thinking about how I found the law of one, what certain types of things happened in my life to lead me to this type of information. So if that interests you, let me know, and we'll try to throw that in the upcoming podcast. Other than that, my friends, be the observer, step back. All is well. Observe yourself and the reactions to your spontaneous reactions to any outside catalyst, and just do your best, attempt to love. As you seek love, you are doing well. I will leave you with a final Raw quote, which is from session 42.5. Raw states, "Balance is not indifference, but rather the observer not blinded by any feelings of separation, but rather fully imbued with love." So it's not that when you are, if you're a balanced entity and you're going out to seek, it's not that you are seeing the world in an indifference. You're not seeing it with just a neutrality. You are seeing it as love and fully imbued with love. Everything is the creator, a distortion of the one infinite creator, which is in its essence unconditional love and intelligent infinity. And so, my friends, if you would like to be a balanced being, you go out there and be the observer and observe love. And that's what you're attempting to do. And you're attempting to observe love and be love. So I wish you all the luck in the world in that endeavor. And thank you guys for listening. If you appreciated the podcast, you can get links to this, theoneinfinitecreator.com, and I have links to download of all of this for free from LL Research. And as I seek to freely give, because I feel that is important from the Law of One perspective, I do not wish to put any of this information and inspiration behind paywalls. So this is all freely given service, and I really appreciate my friends who have joined the Patreon and send me little PayPal donations once in a while. I'm extremely grateful for that, because that allows me the time to, put towards this type of podcast. It gives me a little more time to, share some more details with you of my love of life and the love of the Law of One and just the way I see things, because I asked you guys if you were interested in a podcast and you said yes. And so, if you want it, I'm here. But I find great value in this for myself. So, just in further enhancing my abilities to communicate and attempt to serve you guys. So, yeah, it's good for everybody. If you're able to join the Patreon, I really appreciate it. If not, it's okay. This service is freely given. I love you guys no matter what. So, thanks for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, and I'll try to get a second podcast out closer to Friday. Take care.